David Moore. Dave Moore is a Navy and Air Force winged aviator and officer. He survived 2 plane crashes, flew through 3 hurricane low level with the Coast Guard on the HU-25 Falcon jet during search and rescue, and logged 39 combat missions in the Middle East with the Air Force in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. David Moore.
All right, thank you, Matt. All right, so I've come to a conclusion. The only reason I'm up here is because when you guys fly in, you don't want to look up and see me in the cockpit, right? So my new mission is being up here. But just out of a little bit of fun, I'm still an avid flyer, and I still love to, I fly all the time. And we just had our website was just redone, and the webmaster, that's his title he goes by, he had just put on there last week that I was in 3 plane crashes. So I was out flying in that snotty weather just a couple days ago on my way to Philadelphia, and I was like, I hope this guy wasn't forecasting something I don't know about. I mean, seriously, I was like thinking about it. I was like, I don't know. So, but anyways, just a lot of fun. Really happy to be here, and what a time for human resources. So I know you guys have been getting to the nuts and bolts. All kinds of knowledge getting dropped this weekend on the conference, or yes? All right. So I know a little bit about HR, but what a great time, because now we have a depleting pool of this talent, and you guys are so much more important in a company. It's no longer just taking care of the benefits. It's no longer, you guys are the people who are the first contact with that possible recruit. You're the person that's in touch with your current employees, and then on the way out the door, from everything that I've learned, you still have to leave those doors open. So you face a whole nother set of issues, and that's what this new getting the best and the brightest, and what become somebody worth following is all about. It's about people. The one thing that I know is people, and I want to share that with you. So I'm over in Silicon Valley, and I'm waiting to get on the airplane. We just finished up with a conference over there, and I'm standing in the terminal. Do you guys know how hard it is to get to the terminal if you don't have a ticket to get on the airplane? Right? I mean, it's like an act of Congress. You got to write your congressman to get through there so you can go see somebody off on an airplane. We just tried it, and I'm in there, and I see this young fellow, and he's surrounded by 3 guys, and they're, you could tell that they were executives. You could tell that they were refined. And I could tell that he was the center of attention. And I just happened to notice it. I try not to be nebby, but I mean, it was obvious what was going on. We get on the airplane, and guess who I'm sitting beside? This young guy. So we're sitting there, and I start talking to him, and I asked him what he was doing. And he said he was going for another interview. He had just finished up with an interview. He's on his way to Los Angeles, and he had another interview there. He was naming off the people he was interviewing with, big DOD contractors and a SpaceX program. I said, well, where are you unemployed from? He called it fun employed. He said, I'm fun employed. I was like, well, that's confidence right there. And I said, well, where are you fun employed from? NASA. Well, can you check on my application? I applied there like 30 years ago. I heard nothing. So he's fun employed. I can't get in NASA, and it was too much of a bureaucracy for him. He didn't want to work there, and he was working with alternate methods of energy for airplanes. Do you think we had anything to talk about? Good Lord. And the flight wasn't long enough down there. So while I was speaking with him, and then he was asking me what I do, and I said, well, because money wasn't his issue. He said, at a certain point, I make enough money that I pay my bills. That's not what I'm looking for. Surprising. I mean, he's in his young 20s. What are you looking for? He wants somewhere that's not a bureaucracy. He wanted somebody that was going to lead him. And I said, well, what are you looking for in leadership? I'm a leadership speaker. Tell me. I need to know. He goes, someone who's worthwhile following. I say, great. You just gave me my next presentation. That was 9 months ago. Thank you. I don't remember his name. So moving forward. You guys like Tommy Boy? Who doesn't like Tommy Boy, right? Come on, doctor. Your plane was like that when I took it. December 17th, 1997. December 17th, 1903 was the first flight ever at Kitty Hawk. 94 years later to the day, Dave is out there in a doctor's airplane. I was down at Ohio University I'm born and bred right not too far down the road from here. I worked at the pizza shop, ran pizzas all through Wexford. We talked about that earlier. And I was a hustler. I had to make my way through college. I had to find a way. So this company approached me and they asked me if I could fly. They had 2 airplanes and if I could fly their airplanes for them. And I said yes. I guess they didn't realize the outcome was going to be this, right? So the son was the general manager of the company. They had a very successful real estate company down in Athens, Ohio. They were the largest provider of real estate down there. And they owned Steubenville Diagnostic Medical Center in Steubenville, Ohio. So I would go and I would fly with Dr. Michael. He was an older gentleman, incredible. He had walked out of Egypt with like 15 cents in his pocket and built this, a pretty decent empire. He made it, he had arrived. And I would fly with Dr. Michael, but the problem with Dr. Michael is, as brilliant as he is, aviation is vocational. It's hands-on. It's something where you have to feel it, you have to grab it, you have to touch it. So after flying with him for a little while, I talked to his son. I said, you know your dad's going to kill himself and whoever is underneath him. He said, I know that. He said, Dave, I want you just to keep flying with him, keep him amused. Dr. Michael wanted to buy a bigger airplane. He wanted to do this on his own. Of course, you have to appreciate that. So I would fly with him, and I would take off on a Tuesday, and I would fly up there, and I'd fly up to Steubenville, and I would give him a flight lesson, and then I would fly back with him and bring him back down to Athens, Ohio. So on December 17th, 1997, normal day, I go out there, and I get up to Steubenville, Ohio, and I pick Dr. Michael up. He was on time as always, and I land, it's about 7 o'clock, right? You guys are all from the north, so you can appreciate it. It's nice and cold out, right? It's December in Ohio. I picked Dr. Michael up. Steubenville, Ohio, is anybody familiar with the airport there? No? One pilot? All right. It used to be a lot shorter. It used to be 2,800 feet, and I hated flying into this place. I used to equivalent it to landing on an aircraft carrier. It sat on the side of this hill. It was narrow, and it was short. Pilots hate it, right? But I was making $10 an hour under the table, and I needed the money because on my off time, I was pumping plasma as well. So the money was great, right? I was. And they gave me a place to live in, which was in the basement of one of their houses because they couldn't rent the place out. So I was living there for free. It was heated by the pipes up in the ceiling. I had a stove, so I was happy about that. I had a refrigerator, but when it rained, the water would come in, and I'd actually have to flip my mattress up off the floor so it didn't go into my mattress. And I think I got some black mold in my lung, probably from living there. But so anyways, I go up, I get Dr. Michael, and we go to take off. We're racing down the runway, or we go out, we're flying, and I take him over to Wheeling, West Virginia. Big runways, the controller's up there. He's probably reading a newspaper, probably still is, like to go down there. Lit runways, very nice place to go into. So we go down to Wheeling, and Dr. Michael looks at me and he said, David, I need to learn how to land at Steubenville. It's like, all right, $10 an hour, right? We'll work it out. So we go back to Steubenville, and we're doing full stop landings. We're in a Blanca Super Viking, a little bit of high performance airplane, has stretched fabric across the wings, light, a lot of horsepower. And we come in and we land, and Dr. Michael looks at me and he says, David, I scare the crap out of you, don't I? I said, Dr. Michael, you do, but I'm not going to let anything happen to us. Liar. I didn't want to let anything happen to us, right? So we're going down the runway, and all of a sudden there's a loud boom just as we rotate. He's in the left seat, I'm in the right seat. Just as we're taking off, it's pitch black out, and the lights are going off, the horns are going off, and the airplane starts to veer to the right. So we're heading right for where they pump the fuel at. Yeah, not a good place to impact, right? I didn't make NASA, but I know hitting the fuel pump's probably not good, right? So we're going for the fuel pumps. The airplane's climbing out a little bit, and I go to turn it with the ailerons. I take the airplane. Anybody know what the ailerons are? Yeah, they're on the wings, right? And that's what we use to turn. Normally, we use the ailerons to make the airplane turn. So the ailerons are unresponsive. The right wing's hanging down. We're just like a rocket ship on this big 300 horsepower like homing engine, just dragging through the air. We're like a missile. Not good. So I start stomping on the rudder. And I use the rudder that's up on the tail. That's usually what you use to coordinate the turn. And I get the airplane to skid around the fuel pump. We're still climbing out. So we get around the fuel pump, and then there's a big hangar, right? Why not? We can't even enjoy this little victory we had yet. So we're coming for the hangar, and I'm getting us around the hangar, and it's happened very, 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 very quickly. So we get around the hangar, and I knew we were going to crash. And I said, well, we have to crash on the field. Do you guys know what an uncontrolled airport is? That's where the pilots just control it. We talk to each other. We control the lights. There's nobody else out there. There's no control tower. Nobody even knows that we're out there flying. We have to hit this runway. So we're coming around. I'm trying to get us around, and we don't make it. And we just start going through the woods. So we're going through the woods, and the branches and the trees and everything's coming inside that cockpit, one of the most violent things I'd ever seen in my life. Right before we hit the trees, I said, Dr. Michael, this is it. We're done. I had signed out. I mean, I can't believe how calm I actually was about it. You just never know how you'll react for something like this. So we start going through the trees, and I hit a tree. I know that because I have the mark still right here, right? What are you going to do? You got to laugh about it. So you guys heard that I was in the military, right? I flew with the Navy. I flew with the Air Force. So you can't be knocked out and knocked unconscious like that and get in the Navy flight school. So I wasn't knocked out, right? So when I came to, I'm on the bottom of the airplane. My face is ripped off. I kid you not. My nose is ripped off like this. I'm suffocating because mud is packed in my nose. Mud's packed in my mouth. My left hand is up underneath the bottom here. And I'm hurt, to say the least. So when I kind of get together what's going on, the first thing I do is I rip the mud out of my mouth so I can breathe. Air, like number one, right? We need it. So I get the breathing. My second thought was, this does not happen to Dave Moore. That's what everybody that's ever been in a serious accident will tell you. You think it does not happen to you. My head was ringing so bad, I was like, this is real. I reached for the radio. I wanted to call and put a mayday out. The plane's broke in half. The radios don't work, obviously. And Dr. Michael has my shoulders pinned down so I can't move. So when you crash, what do you think of? What's that? Well, you're going to burn, right? All the movies, you burn. I seen the movies, you burn. I don't want to burn. I got to live. Got to give him my $10 an hour. He hasn't paid for this flight yet. So I'm stuck there and I start screaming, Dr. Michael, get off of me, get off of me. Because the way he has me pinned forward, I'm pinned down to the ground and I can't move. Well, nothing from Dr. Michael. So obviously I figured he's dead, right? So I start pulling. They said I wouldn't have fingernails. I think 3 or 4 of my fingers were missing fingernails. Grew back like a lizard. So I start pulling as hard as I can to get my hand out from underneath that airplane because I need to get out of this airplane. I get my hand free and I undo my harness and I drop to the ground and I kind of scoot out sideways. My ribs are cracked. You can't breathe. Anybody have cracked ribs? You can't breathe? It's horrible. Now you're out here all beat up in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and I can't breathe. So I get myself away from the airplane, but I realize Dr. Michael's still in there. So I go back in there and I get Dr. Michael out. So here I am. I'm a young college kid. I don't know CPR. I don't know anything about medicine or I didn't get accepted to NASA. I'm just here, right? And Dr. Michael's laying there, and I get him out of the airplane. His eye flickers. So I said, well, he must be alive. So I start dragging. I don't know. I have a crack down the center of my skull right here where I wasn't knocked out, right? So it's all kind of gray. But Dr. Michael's out. And I'm dragging him, and we're going, and we're just going, and we're out in the middle of the woods. I can see my face hanging off, and I just, I think it's horrible seeing your face hanging off. You're a young man. You're kind of in vain still, and we're climbing, and I'm dragging along. About an hour into it, Dr. Michael, all of a sudden he comes to. He said, David, you forgot my shoe. I don't know, man. So I looked down, and he had penny loafers on, because I remember the penny being in there, and he only had one. I was like, man, I forgot your shoe. And I didn't say that. I said, Dr. Michael, we were in a plane crash. He goes, David, you forgot my shoe. So I roll him off, and we're sitting out in the middle of the woods out in Steubenville, Ohio. I have no idea where we're at. And the adrenaline is worn off. It's been about an hour. And from the top of my head to the bottom of my toe, everything hurt. Just everything started to hurt. And the clarity was unbelievable because I knew, and I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit so bad. I just wanted to sit down, take a break. I had no cell phone. All I had in the back of my mind is I have to get up to that payphone and call 911. I have to call somebody and get help for us. But I knew if we stopped there that we would die out in the woods there that night. It was the most clear moment of my life and death. So we start chugging out. We're crawling. We get to that hill, crawling through water, get up the hill. And then when you get to the runway is about 3,000 feet, right? So it's still a little bit of a half mile. 2 hours into this, I'm going a mile and a half. You don't want to go another half mile. I see a light on in the hangar, and a guy that owns a construction company, he was working on his airplanes. And I started screaming. The newspaper said frantically. Well, of course I was screaming frantically. And he shines the light on me and he said, car or plane? I come out of the woods, my face is all ripped off. This dude's just with one shoe just laying back there. His heart beats like 36 beats per minute. And he's still looking for his shoe. He's not even conscious. He's like barely alive. So the guy takes Dr. Michael. He puts me up on a running board on a fire truck. And I was a young college kid. I said, hey, you think I get a cigarette? Right? I mean, come on. Victory. He said, I don't think you need a cigarette. I'm like, who is this guy? I said, well, can you help me up so I can see my face? He goes, I don't think you need to look at your face. Well, this guy, worst guy ever to help you, right? So Dr. Michael, they bring in Life Flight. They put me in the ambulance. They get us off to the hospital. I'm in the hospital, and all I can think about is that pizza shop. I'm going to be back in Wexford making those chicken salads, running them up and down that street. And I was like, I don't know what happened out there. Couple surgeries. Dr. Nazru Mami, unbelievable guy, Steubenville Medical Center, forgave me for all my debt, which was awesome. And he pasted me back together. Days of surgery. I had real blonde hair back then. He took the pieces of my face. He took it from inside my hair, and he loose stitched it in so it would grow back. He was ahead of his time. And he fixed my nose. If you look at my nose, you can see a little bit of scarring there. My eyebrow splits right here. He took my face and he sewed it back up through here. Sewed my eyelid back on. He told me I was the Sistine Chapel. That's pretty messed up. So now comes penalty time, right? Because no aspiring pilot ever wants to meet the FAA and the NTSB, right? So I'm laying in my hospital room. They had cut my pants off me in the emergency room. My eyes had swollen shut when I got back. It's really, really cool, but I want to push forward. And I'm laying in there, and the guy comes in. He's pacing back and forth in front of my bed. I'm like, wow, pizza shop. Give him a call. Coming back. And the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, the investigator, he's pacing back and forth. And he looks at me. He said, you crashed about 7 o'clock that night. Okay? I wasn't taking time. I don't know. He said, it took you 2 hours to get out of the woods. I had to put an airplane up in the air at 1 o'clock the next day to find that wreckage. That's how far in the woods you were. You can see I made a nice little path up there. We made a nice little path up there. He said, I've investigated a lot of accidents, but you should not be alive right now. Well, here I am, man. I don't know. He said, when you were going through the woods, it ripped the fuel tanks out. You cleared a ditch, or gully, he called it, by 1.5 feet. He said, I'll give you 1.5 feet because you didn't clear it. Mathematically, we can see the pathway. There's no way you cleared it. And then he said, you hit straight down and you broke off and you were drug 160 feet on the side of your face. Ripped the David Clark headset off. That's what ripped my face off. He goes, son, I don't know if you believe in God or not, but you should not be alive right now. What do you say to the guy, right? I'm like, well, here I am. Am I in trouble? So he's standing there and they're like looking at me and it's like real awkward. I'm like this in the bed, right? Like, I don't know, man. How's my face look? I want to be the best looking pizza boy in the town. He goes, I have to know. I couldn't find the airplane. How'd you get out? I looked at him and I said, I'm just from Avonworth here, right? I said, I looked up into the sky and I saw a light. Both these guys are like this. I said, the rotating beacon at the airport. I just crawled for it. A little anticlimactic for what they were looking for. So, anyways, that's me in the hospital room. People. One thing Dave Moore has learned about is people. And that's what you guys, that's your whole business. You are human resources. Every one of you have a plane crash. Every one of you have a story like that. Every one of you have been in that situation where it's that aha moment. Las Vegas, Marine, truck, helping people, father, jumping on top of his wife, the floods down south, the hurricanes, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Houston, the wildfires. Everybody has stuff going on in their life. What I had the privilege to learn was the difference between traumatic events, which they like to call post-traumatic stress, and what post-traumatic growth is growing from that event, taking what happened to you and using it in a positive and learning from it and keeping the disorder off of it. And I think we can all agree to that. It's what you take from the lesson is what's going to put you on the trajectory of your life. So here's what I learned. I learned that you have to look at where you're at. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And how am I going to get there? What's my route to get there? What is the bridge that takes you from where you're at to who you are? Well, we have two different things. We have knowledge and we have wisdom, right? Knowledge is the understanding saying, look, if I want to be that guy, if I want to set this goal so lofty that I'm going to be that guy, then I have to do this, this, and this. What's wisdom? It's doing this, this, and this, right? Because that's the hardest part. We know where we have to change. We know what we have to fix. Because I promise you, if you put the best version of you out there, people will follow. And not only people, but the right people will follow you. Because really, what is a team? A team is a group of individuals. We're not talking about teamwork, but a team, it's just a group of individuals that have strengths and weaknesses, and you bring them together because the strengths play to the other weaknesses, and you all share a common goal. So if you put the best possible you out there, you're going to attract the talent that you want to put your organization on the trajectory. I live by Einstein, man. Because what does he say right there? I like to think that I have a great mind, and it's not the crack in my head because I hear crazy all the time. My wife tells me I'm good crazy. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I hear it a lot. But Einstein, and that's what we run into. We run into what everybody else is saying about us. And he says, great minds encounter violent opposition from mediocre thought. A kid gave that to me on a bookmark when I was in college, and I've never, ever, 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 ever forgotten that. And I live by it. That explains my craziness, right? Rejection. It's a part of it. So when you're getting rejected, and I just wanted to use a couple examples. I don't want to stand up here and tell you all the examples that everybody's heard, right? Who's the low-hanging fruit? Thomas Edison, right? 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. You can go through them all. But look at Oprah. Oprah was fired from Baltimore from the TV because she couldn't take her emotions out of it. Look at Walt Disney. Walt Disney, they fired him from the Kansas City Sun because he had no creative thought and was incapable of coming up with new ideas. Could you imagine being his boss that fired him? Wow. You talk about vindicating yourself, right? My man went the other way. He's like, I'll show you. I got some ideas. These crazy mouses will be dancing everywhere. Kids will love it. You got to live life. How about a man behind the scene? Somebody that I probably know that most of you don't know, but Billy Mitchell. Who's Billy Mitchell? Anybody know? Do you really? That is amazing. There's the man behind the curtain, not Billy Mitchell. He proved them wrong so much that they gave him a gold congressional medal, and they made him like a 2-star general, and, which would have been most important to me, they named the what after him? The B-25 Mitchell. Because that's what he proved them wrong about. And every single one of them, he went into, everybody in our government told him he was wrong. But if it wasn't for him, we might not have won World War II, because that's what we bombed Tokyo with. That's what we took their fleet out. So Billy Mitchell, that you never knew about until we learned about it, has been somebody that had a significant impact in your life who was told that they were crazy, but he kept with it? The court martial. It's got to be mine or his. I stood in front of an Air Force 05, a Navy 06, and a Coast Guard 06. That's how I got my start in speaking. I could talk my way through. Big misunderstanding, sir. All a big misunderstanding. Court martial, it's an amazing story. But you don't realize that people are out there really getting it done. I don't want to give you fluff. I want you to walk out of here and say, Dave is real. Billy Mitchell's real. He's like us, and he went in there and fought and fought and fought for what he believed in. Learn to follow yourself. Because if we didn't have him, we didn't have the people out there, we're so easily ready to give away the keys, aren't we? Especially when you're down, you want to hear what everybody else has to say. What I learned is that you have to believe in yourself. You have to trust yourself, and you have to trust your own gut feeling. My biggest fear in life, you guys want to know my biggest fear? That I'll die before they know how brilliant I am. I don't want the Wikipedia page after I'm dead. I want them to know now. I'm just kidding. But that seems like what it happens, right? It's like people die and then the nostalgia, and we make it bigger than it is. And if the guy on the Gateway Clipper's right, because we were just down there with the kids, George Washington fell in the river when he was drunk and had to get pulled out by the Indians. Right? It's like we all had those moments where you're like, man, can somebody just forget about that? Can somebody just forget about it? I don't know if that's true. We were just on the Gateway Clipper, and I just was like, wow. I don't know where that came from. I'm going to use that someday. Learn to follow yourself. We don't. And people, our parents, God, we have to love our parents. You guys are a little bit more established, but we love our parents. If it was up to my mom, I'd still be at that first job I had because I did well at it, and she said, that's what you should be doing. David, sell boxes. They gave you a job. They gave you a company car. That's when I was healing from my crash. You should sell boxes. And I never would have left there. And then our friends, we get our friends around us, and they want to take us in one direction. But what I found, there's two problems there. Our friends are great. A lot of times they're giving us advice because of the position we're in, and they're looking for what they can get out of it. Childhood friends, they tend to hold us back because of their own. When people are advancing, it makes everybody uncomfortable. Because of their own stagnation, it tends to hold us back. I went to my 20th reunion 3 or 4 years ago. And when I went in there, I walked in, and there was a kid that I used to run around with a lot. A lot. We played football together. We hung out a lot. We were good friends. We had lost touch over time. And I walked in there, and I saw Brian, and I was happy to see him. And they had the classes mixed with 3 years. And I said, hey, Brian. And he just looked at me. And I said, okay, Mr. Steiner wants us to go out for a picture. He goes, okay. Big guy. He just stood there at the bar drinking his beer. Then I was like, okay. I said, I guess Brian doesn't like me anymore. I don't know what happened over the last 20 years, but apparently he doesn't like me. Walked back in there. I said, Brian, Mr. Steiner wants us to go out for a picture. Okay. All right. I walk outside. Real big guy, right? I'm standing outside. Here he comes, knocking people out of his way. Dave Moore! I didn't know it was you. Half the people, most people didn't even recognize me. And that's what we need to challenge ourselves is every 5 years when we look back at that person, we shouldn't recognize that person from 5 years ago. Because if we do, back to Walt Disney, anybody know who's the president of Walt Disney? CEO? Bob Iger. Who said that? Awesome. Do you remember when he bought Pixar? Well, it's Disney Pixar now, right? And everybody said, what are you doing? You're Disney. You're Disney World. You're this. This is what you do. And Bob Iger went completely against the flow. He bought Pixar, and now they're Disney Pixar, and they're just flourishing. And he said, if your organization is plateaued, if your organization is not growing, it's dying. And everybody thought he was wrong. Obviously he wasn't, but as people, we have to think that about ourselves too. If we're not growing, then we're setting ourselves back. What are you good at? It's a hard question. And just amuse me. Just look to the person to your right and tell them what you're good at. If somebody's at your right, just try it. One thing you're good at. I love it. I never thought in a room with HR professionals you'd have that much fun. And I even heard some crazy ones coming out. Did anybody have a hesitation to say anything they were good at? Did? I mean, you do. But now if I asked you to say, turn to the person to the right of you and tell them 5 things that you're bad at, I could probably just get my stuff and leave. And everybody just being here talking because we're so quick to point out what we're not good at. We are so quick. And it's not being arrogant saying, hey, I'm good at this. There's no arrogance in that. It's knowing what you're good at is a hard thing to do. And we do it all the time. I used to do it when I was building our business. I worked in sales. And then when my sales manager would call me, I was doing great. I was right at the top of the company. And he would call me and I'd always get so nervous. Be like, oh man, Nathan's upset. He's upset. Because I couldn't see that I was doing awesome. I couldn't see that I knew how to work with people and I understood people. All I could see is he probably knows on Fridays I sleep until 9 o'clock. He probably knows that because I could think of everything that I do wrong in that job. And all he really cared about was everything I did right. And then I'd talk to him. He'd be like, hey man, everything good? Yep. Hey, have a great weekend. I think he knew I slept until Friday at 9. In my office day considered I'd sleep in late. I'd take the family out. We'd get some lunch. And then we go do whatever else. And I think he was okay with that. But it's easy to point out what you're not good at. You're not being arrogant when you put forth what you are good at. You guys know I was in the Coast Guard, right? U.S. Coast Guard.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
That was crazy, Germans. I love that. What are you? Wow. So, what are we talking about though? Communication. To be a good leader, what kind of communicator do you have to be? A great communicator. To be a great leader, you have to be an outstanding communicator. So much, like my example with Nathan, people don't know what's on your mind. You have to set the vision. You have to let them know what you're thinking. This millennial generation, my friend on the airplane, I'll tell you what he wants more than money. He wants the ability to work within margins. He wants the ability for you to set a left and right boundary. And he wants you to let him work within there and he'll do great things. And he wants you to give him 360-degree feedback. They want it. The millennial generation desire it. They earn it. They want your approval. And that's not really a bad thing. And we can talk bad about them. We can look at it like it's a negative thing. But really, it's a positive thing. Because they want to know what you think. They want buy-in. They don't want to... Does anybody watch the Shark Tank? All the millennial projects. All the young people going in there. Can anybody think of like what those projects kind of have what to them? Innovation and a backstory a lot, right? A lady in Afghanistan sews these belts. So we're going to sell this belt for $65. Mr. Wonderful comes unglued. Unglued. He wants to throw them out, tell them that he's killing money, and then they ask what the sales are, and he says, we have $8 million a year in sales. They want to be a part of something. They want the buy-in. They want ownership in your company. They want to be a part of the project. And that's what you want to go out and fish. And instead of saying, we don't understand this generation, we should take it and embrace it. What are we talking about? Hold on. I have to. Since this one's a little bit older, Nicolas Cage, I'm not sure who the other guy is, I forget his name. I have to turn the volume up. This is before HD came out.
You don't need someone crazy, but one step short of crazy. What do you get?
Obsessed.
Passionate.
Passion, right? Anybody have a great definition for passion? It's hard, isn't it? Thank God I came. It's something that it's something that will get you out of bed in the morning. But the problem is, you know, when we think of passion, you could throw like Steve Jobs. You could say somebody like that who like changed the world with a home button. Or you could say like, you know, Tom Petty, somebody who's so passionate about their music, and we use artists. But that's not us. That's not the every person doesn't have that one thing that's all encompasses passion. Passion is something that's willing to get you out. And let's face it, there is mundanity. There's mundanity in everything we do. So how do you show your people passion in what they do? As an HR person, you have to have micro passions. You have to have, I'm sure there's some small business owners in here, right? The most important thing about owning a small business is having multiple strands of revenue. Has anybody ever heard that before? I mean, you have to. You have to have multiple strands of revenue. So you have to have multiple passions, because maybe if your passion is going down and being a part of the PTA, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not going to support your family if that's what you need to do. If you need to bring home the bread. So we have to have these micro passions, these small parts. I love to speak. I love it. I love to teach. I love to teach aviation, and I love to fly for myself, and I love to be at home with my family. I have all these micro passions, these different things that come in and out of my life, and that's what the trick is to your people is finding micro passions for them. If they're in a job where there's a lot of mundanity, address that mundanity. Address it. Say, look, I know you have to do this, because I learned, I was flying airplanes, and one thing I learned about flying airplanes in the military, what do you think makes an airplane in the military fly? What's that? Lowest bidder. You're all over it. And paperwork. Because we have to tell the lowest bidder why everything's broke. So there was a lot of mundanity, and I hated the paperwork, and I knew it was monotonous, and I knew it was a bureaucracy, and I knew I had to do that if I wanted to go fly through the hurricane, because at that time in my life, I did want to fly through those hurricanes. They'd come in, they'd be like, who's going? Me! Now I'm like, I don't know. Time out. Time out. What about him? How about I teach these guys, and then we'll send them? That's a better idea. So you have to get micro passions. You have to drill down, because if you can't get the people to come in with some kind of passion, the job economy is strong. They're going to go to the next person, they give them 50 more cents an hour, and then they're gone. They're out your door. Well, hey, I just spent thousands of dollars training you. We're working on you. You're our intellectual property. You're the best thing our company has. So you have to help them with passion. As HR people, I would hope that one of your passions are taking a person and putting them in the right job. And maybe being able to shuffle people around and say, hey, over here, this guy's a good guy. And I know he just doesn't fit right here, but what if we shuffle him over here? That will make his life better. And then you meet their needs. And when you meet people's needs is when you see success beyond imagine. Driving forward. The hardest thing when we fail with our passions, I'm sure most of you have seen this, but when we're driving forward, if we drive looking in the rearview mirror, what happens? That's it, man. We crash, right? But if you're driving forward, looking out the front window, the valleys or the plateaus, as Iger put it, they happen a lot more than the peaks. So you can't look back and say where you're at or what happened before. You have to keep pushing forward, and you have to instill that in their people, and you have to get them to believe in you. And it goes back to what? What's become somebody worth following about? If you put the best possible you forward, those people will follow you. And if you get them to follow you, they'll follow you down any road you go, and you can just drive forward. All right.
What, sir?
James. Earn this. Earn it.
Who doesn't like Tom Hanks, huh? You guys remember that from Saving Private Ryan? Purpose. Who here has gotten to the point they're at with no help from anybody else? Not me, for sure. So at some point, to find purpose, because how do you go in and tell people what you're looking for your purpose is? You have to find what you think that you're here for. What you have to earn, whatever you're here for. Every day I wake up, I feel like I got a second chance. I feel like I got a second chance to be here. So you can probably see that I'm a very intense and passionate person. I go out and I give 110%. I don't always know what I'm doing, but I get up there and I stick it out and I'll fight. I'm gritty. I'll get down there. I'll fight and I'll work for it and I'll help as many people as I can. That's my purpose. My purpose was to be an airline pilot. Then it was to be a military pilot. I checked those boxes. Now I'm going in this direction and just keep going. But your purpose is, and you have to share that with your people. My sixth grade English teacher, she said, Dave Moore will never be a military pilot. Great, isn't it? Apparently there was an incident. I was in the back of the room. I was reading a dirty joke book. Got busted down. Avonworth High School, right? Mrs. Cosgrove. I know she's gone now. And she was livid. And the most awkward part was when you have to confess where you got it from, when you got it from your dad's drawer, right? So now I got two sides of the spectrum working against me because he's not happy at all with me. So there was a meeting that I attended, and there was a contract written out that I would bring a pencil more than 4 inches long. It would have an eraser. It was ridiculous. And she looked at me and she said, what do you want to do with your life? I said, I want to be a military pilot. She said, you will never be a military pilot. I love when people tell me what I can't do so I can show them what I can do. Mrs. Cosgrove, she's going to come back at me one day. So I told you my passion. I hope you guys can see it. People, purpose, and passion. People, we have to drill down and not be afraid of what we're good at. It's not arrogant knowing what you're good at. We have to drill it down, look where we're at, where we need to go, and how we're going to get there. However that GPS route is to get in there, that's what we have to do. People, passion. It's such a hard thing to describe. It's the things that will get you out of bed in the morning where you can't wait to get out of bed. You can't wait. You're not even waiting for the alarm clock to go off, and you'll get out because you're ready to hit it. You're ready to get out there, and you're ready to make a difference. Micro passions. Having many different things fulfilling your life. Because if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. If you're not increasing, you're decreasing. And then purpose. Are we all just sitting on this big rock, just spinning around in space? The NASA guy, I think he broke it down for me. But are we just out there just spinning around in space? Or is there something that you feel from the inside that you need to be driving for? And how does that work with what you're good at, what your passions are, and where your purpose is, and where it's taking you? I really appreciate your time. That's my beautiful wife right there. She's about to give birth to our third daughter. And I've already been told if I want a son that we're adopting. So this is it. Me and all my girls. Thank you very much.